Hello, welcome to another day in quarantine. We're up for an 8 a.m. class, a yoga class with a yoga teacher who I've taken some photos of before called Mark Laws. He's actually living in Bali, but he's working with a studio in Chelsea to stream a class. He's a really good teacher. I actually found out about this class because I was looking through some old pictures on Instagram. You know, when someone goes and likes loads of photos, and one of his was one of the liked ones. So I had a look at that and got into a little Instagram hole. And went onto his account, saw in his story that he's doing this class this morning, so booked us in, £5 for a great class, but we've got 10 minutes till class starts, so I've left all my stuff lying around, bikes and everything, so I'm going to get that tidied up and get us going. Hey guys, so you join me here at my desk. That was a lovely yoga flow. That was actually yesterday morning, and we have moved on to the next day, but I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk you through those photos that I shot with Mark and just kind of explain how I set the lights up, how I shot it, and hopefully that'll give you a few tips on something that you could implement in your shoots next time you're in the studio. So to light this, I think I had about 4 lights in total. We had 2 in front of Mark and a 8x8 foot scrim. It's an 8x8 foot frame with probably a half stop scrim, and the lights were bouncing into that and bouncing the light softly back over Mark. Didn't want anything too harsh, wanted this to look quite soft. And then with one of the other lights, we had one behind the backdrop, which was doing something similar in that it was bouncing up into a poly board, which is like a polystyrene board, 8 by 4 feet. And that was then spilling over the back of Mark. And then we just had a softbox kind of at his feet, which was filling in the shadows that that the lights in front of him were creating. I hope that all makes sense, but I'll do a little drawing to kind of point things out to you. You can see in his hair here, this little highlight. So sorry it's a little bit pixelated, but I've zoomed in quite far, and I've just pulled this picture off my website and zoomed in, but you get the gist. So you can see this highlight here, the yellow that is in his hair, and that's just there to help separate him from the background. But what you can also see that it's doing is it's creating this little highlight along the edges of his arms here, which is quite nice. You can see it in the shoulder and his shoulder here and along here, which just creates a nice clip, and it kind of gives it a bit more of a 3-dimensional look to it. I think the biggest, most effective part of that light in the background is what it does for his hair here, just that little clip, which just separates, because otherwise you can see his hair, even with this light that we've got in front of him, is quite dark. That light clipping him from behind helps separate him from the backdrop. The backdrop is from a place called Hapaka Studios. They make some amazing studios. I'll link their website below. We managed to get this because it was damaged, so we got it on sale. It was still like £180 if I remember right. So they're very expensive, even expensive to rent, but we managed to sell it on and get plenty of use out of it, so we didn't lose too much money, and obviously got these fantastic pictures out of it. So that's what the clip light was doing, which is coming from behind the backdrop, and I will show you how I did that shortly. And the light in front of him, which is just giving us the most light, is just like all this here, which is on the front of his body there, and his face. That's kind of what the front light is doing there. Because it's so soft and it's coming from quite high up, you can see we're getting this nice little, it's creating this nice bit of definition, which is, you know, you can see it in his arm here. It's light in here, but it's also light in here. But given the angle of it and that it's quite toppy, it helps create this definition, which we then see all over the picture in Mark's body and under the chin here, and then on the underside of his arms as well is quite dark. It's still catching his feet down the bottom there. And finally, with just the light behind him, clipping him, and the lights from the front, we were getting quite a lot of dark shadow. So I just popped a softbox basically on the floor, pointing up, which would fill in the shadows. Because you can see here, if I just zoom in to Mark's midriff, we see like there is shadow here, but it's not completely black. It's not dark blacks with no detail. so you still get a little bit of detail here. Had the softbox not been there on a low power at his feet kind of pointing up, we would have lost that detail and it would be really contrasty and it would just alter the whole feel of the whole picture. So I'll zoom back out and I will attempt to draw. So basically we had Mark here doing a yoga. We had the backdrop here, and then this is our 8 foot by 8 foot scrim, and then this was a polyboard. Boom. So we had a flash here pointing in, boom, boom, and that was bouncing back and spilling across Mark there, and then that was our main light. And then we had another flash here, which was bouncing into this polyboard, excuse my drawing, and then spilling just over the top. I've probably drawn my backdrop too high here. It was spilling just over the top and clipping Mark's hair. I'll just do that. And then I just had a softbox on the ground there. Check out these drawings, and I think it was probably sat on a sandbag or something. And that's just filling in the shadows. So let me just explain this clip from the back, because this is actually one of my favourite ways to light people to get that clip light. Some people use a softbox, or depending what look you go for, some people might use like a dish, like a reflector, and pretty much any time I can use this in studio is what I go for. So normally people go for a softbox and say this is our backdrop here, and it's just kind of tipped over the top there. And if our subject is down here, it's just spilling into them. But I find that's quite harsh. It's still reasonably soft, but it's still a lot harsher than, say, if you have your polyboard here and your backdrop is here, and then you've got your subject here doing a yoga, and this is the camera here, and then that's me. So then you have your flash here, and it hits here and it spills, but rather than pointing this light say like directly at Mark, say this is where my light is, this is a flash by the way, this bit's a flash by the way, and pointing straight at him, that's going to be a direct source of light, so it's going to be a lot harsher. Bounce that off something and it'll come back softer. So I hope that covers that technique of using that polyboard. Personally, I really like it. The poly is just held, usually using a C-stand and a fork. Polyboard, say that's 8 foot, and then you just have a C-stand arm on a C-stand. If you don't know what a C-stand is, just Google that. They're really versatile. They can handle quite a bit of weight, and they also have 1.5 meter arms, so you get varying lengths of arms to allow you to suspend the lights with the stand kind of out of the way. Get the stand out of the way so you can get a clear shot, or in this instance, you get like a fork, which is exactly how it sounds. It's just like a pitchfork looking thing, quite a brutal looking piece of equipment, and you just jab it in there into the polystyrene, and the same on this side, and it gets your lights out of the way. And then we had the background here with Mark, and then this was me taking a picture, and then we had the flash head here, and it was bouncing in and then back. Actually, the flash head was probably more directly behind the backdrop, bouncing up and then bouncing forward to Mark. Okay, so then next I just did something similar on the front, to be honest. I had a 8 foot, or it might have been a 12 by 12 foot scrim, so really big. That has a silk sheet in it, and I just had a flash head and it bounced into that, and because it's hitting this big surface, it comes back, gives that soft light over Mark there. Softbox down here, my drawings are getting worse, just filling in any of the shadows that this light source created. This softbox would have been on really low power, just so it doesn't drown out, because you don't want to underlight someone because it gives a weird crazy look, all the shadows are upside down. Really, this is just filling in some of the shadows. You don't want to eradicate them, or at least I didn't want to eradicate them for this shot. so it was on a very low power, and it was just kind of down to Mark's right actually, and just filling in some of the shadows. So if I go to this portrait, you can probably see a close-up example of it. One thing that I sometimes do with other photographers' shots, especially portraits, is I zoom right in on the eyes, and you can see the light source just about in Mark's eyes here. You can see that scrim. It looks like I had two lights, because if you really look hard enough, on the left, this is like one light source, but on the left it's brighter than the middle. On the left and right it's brighter than it is in the middle. So sometimes I like to do that on other photographers' photos, and just like, you can sometimes get an idea, you can sometimes even see the reflection of the reflectors in his eyes. We've got a bit more of a close-up of this light that's hitting Mark from behind, which is just separating him from the background. You can imagine if his hair was all dark, as it is, say, in these bits here, he might feel a bit more sunken into the image and not kind of pop out. I feel like this really separates him from the background, and actually bringing him further forward, and I think I shot this on a long lens, like a 70-200, really blurs out that background compared to the previous shot here, which I think looks a lot better for the background. If I had the length in the studio, I might have shot it a little bit further away. But one thing that I might change to this is, I think on the light that was clipping him from behind, I had a warm gel. I think it's just maybe a bit too warm in his hair there. If I had just gone slightly cooler, I could have just made it warmer or made it cooler in post. So if you imagine this is the top of the colorama here, or our backdrop, and then we have the polyboard here behind the background, and in here there is a light flashing, which is hitting this, and it is just spilling all over. You can see that's the great thing about using a polyboard rather than a softbox, is the spread is much wider unless you have a massive softbox. And you can see it's just highlighting his hair there. I'm not even drawing on it. You can see it's just highlighting his hair there. And then in front of Mark, we have our scrim. Actually, it's probably better if I do it up here. And in front of Mark, we have our big scrim here. This is 8x8, and we're just firing into it, and it's spilling back all over him here. And then we've just got a little softbox, which was here, which is just filling in things like these shadows, and keep managing to keep some of the details in it there. I think that pretty much just covers it. I've really liked breaking this down. I'm sorry if my drawings aren't up to too much, but I've really enjoyed it, and revisiting this photo. This is one of my personal favourite photos. It's been in my portfolio since we shot it probably 3 years ago. Really like this photo. If you've got any questions about this setup, if there's some things that I didn't explain right, then just let me know. As far as like what flash head you can use, this setup will work fine with any flash heads. It's all about the modifiers and how you position things and how you set it up here. Remember to like, share and subscribe, and I will see you on the next one. Oh, and let me know if you want me to do this with any other of my shots. I really enjoyed doing this. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay safe and take care, and see you next time.